everyone, welcome to our AI Pulse session on Skip the Blank Page, how to launch AI agents in half the time with accelerators. I'm joined here by Swapna. Swapna is a product leader with over 15 years of experience at companies like Amazon, ADP, Capgemini, as a leader in creating HR and AI solutions. And we're really excited to talk today about some of the trends that we're seeing in the markets, particularly around how business leaders and HR, IT, and other functional units are adopting AI, some of the common implementation challenges. We're going to offer a simple blueprint for how to accelerate AI adoption across your company and give you a simple recruiting example of this blueprint in action. And lastly, we'll end with key takeaways for how you can basically use pre-built AI agents and tools and accelerators to build AI agents faster than ever before. So with that, I'm going to start with some of the trends that we're seeing in the market. So this is from an MIT report on enterprise AI that was released this year. But one of the things we're seeing is 95% of AI projects don't make it to production. So if we look at that chart on the left, you can see a comparison of those general purpose LLM projects versus embedded or task-specific Gen AI. For example, one could be a fine-tuned model or an AI agent designed for a specific process. Only 5% of those are actually make it to production, which is huge. So you might be wondering, what are some of the reasons for that? So the three top reasons, and this is from a survey of business leaders, the top three reasons why AI projects fail is one, teams' unwillingness to adopt new tools, poor model output quality. So there's a lot of issues with hallucination, inaccurate information, or lack of access to enterprise data and systems, and poor user experiences. So you can think of it as we're adopting this new AI tool. We're trying to improve our process. But as Swapna will share later, it's almost like a solution looking for a problem. And if you take that approach where you're thinking of AI being a catch-all fix without deeply investigating the use case, the pain points of all the users involved, and kind of the business objectives, then you're doomed to fail from the outset. And what we see is 5 key challenges as business leaders are adopting AI. The first is no clear starting point. They understand how to use ChatGPT and AI for personal use, but they say, hey, how do I integrate this or weave this into my enterprise processes? Where do I start? What technology should I take a look at? And we're constantly bombarded every week with new AI technology, whether it's DeepSeek or new models or new frameworks. So where do you start is a challenge. The second is hard to adapt. So if your company is like most enterprises, you have multiple integrations and systems that you work with. You might have your HCM system, you might have your ERP system, and also your CRM system, your IT system. And the question is, if I have a cross-functional process, how do I implement that without breaking my existing systems? That's another key challenge that we see. Also, no unified view. So as you adopt AI, it can be somewhat of a black box, especially if different stakeholders in different departments are using AI for different use cases. For example, from my perspective, coming from marketing, I might use AI for creating content. Someone in HR may use AI for automating recruitment or screening candidate resumes. These different processes don't have a unified view of how these agents are performing. And this becomes especially important for things like compliance, for auditability, for security. And then rigid orchestration. So in the past, when we just worked with chatbots and conversational AI, the logic of the way that an AI agent or AI chatbot would behave would be very rigid and sequential. However, with the advent of generative AI, companies are looking for more autonomous, adaptive workflows. Let's say you have new context on a particular process. Your AI solution should be able to adapt to that process and that new business context. And then finally, things are still very IT heavy and IT reliant. Is how do you enable your different functional teams like HR, recruiting, operations, and IT to experiment with AI to build and automate new processes, given that you're so reliant on IT for these sort of things? So, how do you overcome that challenge? So now I'm going to hand it over to Swapna to talk about where we see the enterprise heading in terms of AI adoption and provide a simple blueprint on how to overcome those implementation challenges that we discussed.
Thank you, Nathan. So I'm going to continue talking about our vision and how we envision uh, AI agents in the organization. So you will see there is has been a lot of chatter about AI agents, but where we see the future going, we see that AI is going to optimize every function, and we envision a system where humans work seamlessly with AI agents. So what this slide is really showing, where this is your new organization slide where you have all your different departments, and you have actually your human org, and then there are AI agents who are assisting this organization. So you're going to see a blend in organizations with these AI agents and with human employee that are going to augment work for employees. What we envision, if we take that a bit further, we, like I said, this is going to permeate every single department and every single organization, with the intent of helping humans work with these AI agents. So you'll see, we envision meeting employees where they work and using these AI agents in their flow of work. The innermost circle represents the channels. The next circle represents the employee life cycle, where employees, they are attracted, screened, interviewed, onboarded, integrated, developed into an organization, and then you engage them. And you can envision the same type of cycle for even AI agents. This also encompasses, like I was saying, every single department ranging from HR, IT, finance, procurement, engineering, sales, the full value chain of your organization. And at the outermost circle, you will see that these represent your systems of record or the systems which you have in place. Any modern organization has, more than 50 systems in place across their entire departments. And that's just a very small number. That could be one department. For really large organizations, those systems could be many, spanning even hundreds of applications. Just in the HR space alone, we know that there are at least 17 applications that a large organization has. And so what we are envisioning is this central ecosystem which brings all of these processes, these departments, these systems, these people with AI agents together in a single experience, which you see at the center there. And so, I want to give a blueprint on how we can have a successful enterprise AI implementation. Seeing the first part, transitioning from the first part that Nathan just went through on why AI projects fail, and how do we bridge that gap between this proof of concept and going into production. So, one of the biggest things that we see as the points of failure are that organizations are trying to start with AI and then look for a problem to solve with AI. Instead, what we recommend is to really identify the pain points across your processes, and then try to figure out how do you use AI to actually solve that pain point. So these seem very basic, but I will go through each one of these in details. And that's what the MIT report also says, is that the biggest reason why AI projects fail, the top one which you saw, was really about not getting the team along, or really change management was the biggest hurdle. So this is a simple 5 point process where we're talking about, you know, if you don't know where to start, just start with a very common process that you know. And the simple way to do that is across your employee experience, because that's where the biggest pain points are. And we talked about that life cycle. And so once you have identified, let's say, a process and a pain point, then you need to kind of assemble your AI team, build your business case, and get people aligned with what are those cross functional process or pain points that we are going to solve for a pilot. And then you can execute your pilot project, deciding which are the AI agents which you're going to use, and how will they augment this department or function. And only after you take that business metrics and scale your AI into production, you can after you execute your pilot project, you can measure the business value and optimize, and then finally scale it into production. So let's walk through an example. I'm going to walk through a recruiting example, which is a business process that I was just talking about in the employee life cycle. So here, you can, let's say we're talking about this first step on identifying pain points. And let's say that your current recruiting process has very slow job requisitions or resume reviews and feedback delays that add to your time to hire. And that adds a lot of friction, because those things are very critical to your organization success. So, once you've identified those pain points, like for example, I want to automate screening, or I want to automate interview scheduling, or I want to reduce the number of ticket volumes because the recruiting team is just swamped with answering tickets. So you take some of those main points and you build your business case and ROI before you even start doing anything. Okay, if I apply this and if I optimize this process, this is how much ROI I can gain by applying AI to this business process. And once you have established that business case, that's when you can assemble your AI team and execute the pilot. Once you have had business buy-in just based on the business case and the problem statement. So that's when there is that gating factor before you even start. It's to really get your sponsors aligned, get your organization aligned, and then you have already defined what metrics you are going to capture for this business case after it's executed. And only after that you have assembled your AI team and executed a pilot. This seems very simple, but this could mean whether you are building it in house, whether you are going with an established AI partner, or you are going with a new solution that is already the build versus buy decision, whether you're going to build or whether you're going to buy. And then you can execute your pilot to evaluate that decision as well. And so once you have executed this business process or this pilot, which is trying to solve a specific pain point, you have already set at the beginning of your project the ROI, and and you are executing the pilot in phases, for example, and you're measuring along the way and optimizing along the way. For example, if you're tracking time to fill and your candidate experience or your hiring success, you may have already filled out surveys, for example. And then the final step is to scaling it to production. In this, maybe you're adding more systems and you are automating the entire business process, and it's not just a pilot anymore. So I'm going to walk through this in a little bit more detail. I already did that, but I'm going to go through this in a little bit more detail, taking that recruiting example. So, for example, the pain point, we know that we want to automate the recruiting process, for example. Some of the metrics that we can look for are time to fill, what the duration it takes to identify, hire, or onboard a candidate for an open role. The next is maybe I'm looking at manager workload, the administrative and repetitive tasks that managers handle throughout the recruitment cycle. For recruiters, maybe a pain point is to match candidates with the hundreds of resumes that they get in through the door, because everybody nowadays is using AI. So they're, for one role they're getting thousands and thousands, or at least hundreds. That is the minimum that we see in a day that recruiters are inundated with. So how do you find that great candidate that really aligns with what the organization needs? And then maybe there's a pain point for interview scheduling, that it takes a long time to actually schedule an interview. Even if you found a candidate who you would like to talk to, just scheduling an interview is extremely difficult, especially if you need, for example, a panel interview. The another pain point, for example, could be the time it takes for you to gather that feedback, in gathering timely, structured, actionable feedback that is consistent across the process. And finally, another process you could look at is onboarding. In after the person is hired, what is their pre-boarding process, or how soon can we get them into this organization with the documentation, setup, and compliance tasks that are required. So I've identified these pain points. That was my step one. And then I'm going to take and build a business case. In this case, I have just, this is a very sample, simple business case that I've put up on the screen. But let's say you are calculating the benefits. Okay, if I had an increased acceptance rate, what would that mean for my organization? If I made sure that the onboarding process is smooth, what is my reduced attrition benefit? And what is my overall productivity improvement in what I just saw? If it is a high volume turnover kind of business, this actually adds up really fast, and your business impact is very quantifiable. So, this is what I mean by building your business case. You could say, I need to reduce my time to fill from maybe 5 days to 3 days, or from 2 weeks to 13 days, or what have you. And those are some of the targets that you would discuss with your organization and your sponsoring business team, and then define this entire business case. So here is, you could then define what your architecture looks like. What does your agentic app architecture look like? Here I'm showing a simple process about, the new hire is, he is being brought up into the organization. You're capturing the role grade and country, and then, for example, this is the onboarding process that is shown here. You are collecting HR docs, you're doing IT setup, you're doing facilities, you're doing benefits, you're doing some compliance activities, and then you have a training app. So once you have defined, what types of agents you need, or agentic apps you need, you kind of go through, define which are the systems it needs to connect to, what data do we need to make sure we have before we even start building this process. So this is, defining what your pilot looks like, architecting it, and then using a platform, such as Kore.ai's agent platform, um, to build this entire process, in based on your organization needs. Again, we don't want to do a rip and replace. We should try and reuse as many solutions as we have currently, but still have a single experience for employees. And so you can then decide, once you have decided, what your development cycle is. This is kind of a sample. This is kind of a sample calendar for what your discovery looks like, what your design and sign off looks like, and you're allocating maybe some time for development in QA testing. And then you have maybe some type of UAT testing, and then you have, then you can finally get into production. But you could have maybe one pilot or two pilots, or you could have a sprint by sprint. And once this goes into some type of production, you can open it up to a small set of users. That's what we recommend. Like, do not go big bang. First, you try with a small set of pilot. Again, if you have tried to bring in your organization, try it with a few people in your organization and make them involved through that entire life cycle that we just talked about, so that everyone knows what is to be expected. They're part of the process, and this is nothing to do with AI. It is more on change management. So, this was the sort of business metrics that we were measuring, that were already defined in the business case. So, you take that optimization card and you measure it after maybe your first pilot or second pilot. If you have like phases of pilots, this is, you can take this and measure it. So maybe in the first round you didn't reach that 3 days, you reached maybe one day. Okay, how do I go ahead and tweak this process further so I reach that 3 days time to hire? So you have piloted it with maybe 10 people. Okay, now let me pilot it to 100 people. Let me pilot it to the next 1,000 people. That's a 10-10-10 rule that we talk about for change management. So again, these are some of the metrics that we would have identified, and we keep cross checking this metric as in, as we go throughout these pilots. And so this is a very simple blueprint that we can have, and a holistic perspective on how we can scale enterprise AI with confidence. So again, if you see on the left hand side, these were the top reasons that the MIT report said that, we that most pilots, why they fail. The first was challenging change management. And so by using this process, by identifying the pain points before building the business case, and having executive sponsorship at the beginning of the process, helps in mitigating those first two. Regarding the poor experience, when you're using the pilot, this is where it comes through for, having that channel and meeting the users where they are. So maybe your experience needs to be in Teams or in the channel where they are going to be using this, so it doesn't feel like fragmented systems. So that's where the user experience can take care of that. And then the output quality concerns, that's where, we talked about the pilots. You are measuring, and you're also helping make sure that the organization is comfortable with this, because you would have encountered hallucinations, for example, in your testing, or lack of them in your testing. Most likely you will, but you will need to do some kind of adjustments to make sure those types of things don't arise. But having that initial pilot, and bringing those users along, and helping address those concerns, will make everyone buy in beforehand. And then the unwillingness to adopt new tools. As you do this pilot and you make sure you're involving more and more users, that's where you're helping users um, you're helping users get adapted to these new tools. But these are not really new tools if you use existing collaboration systems such as the MS Teams that we spoke about, or another channel that looks just like ChatGPT. These are things which your employees are already using in your day-to-day report. So this is a simple 5-step process that we talked about, that can alleviate a lot of these concerns, to help you scale your AI project into production. So another simple thing that I want to, just point out, with Core AI, you have a lot of these agents that are already pre-built, which you can, take and go for a test drive without having to really think through, okay, if this is my problem, okay, how do I get started? So a lot of that grunt work is taken off. These are some very common use cases that we have come across with different organizations in our enterprise deployments. And we have specific agents based on vertical or based on horizontal, such as HR, IT, or operations or finance. But we also have specialized verticals for retail, hospitality, and for healthcare. And so these are some of the other insights from the MIT report, where the pilots fail because they don't adapt to real workflows. They don't use external vendors, and there's a stat there that partnerships are more successful than trying to build it in house. And then ROI is the clearest. So you need to have ROI very clear, and I just gave you examples of how you can like really define and measure that ROI. And it is overlooked in a lot of back office functions, but that's where most of the opportunity also lies, that we're talking about for HR, finance, and operations. The only holdup is actually really, really making sure that ROI can be measured cleanly, and time taken is one of the easiest ones that organizations can use. And that was it. So, this was a quick overview on how you can really skip the blank page and, make sure you're aware of all the pitfalls. And by using a vendor such as Kore.ai, and testing out those agents that are pre built in the marketplace, you can get to your AI projects live in production fast.